Cardcaptor Sakura Collector's Edition Review. Much of what is written here can also be found in the Cardcaptor Sakura chapter of Ian's forthcoming book Clampdown, detailing the history of series creators, Clamp, the final part, including details of when the book will be released. You can follow the book's Twitter account, Clampdown Book. After 4 delays since all the anime originally intended to release it, the Blu-ray Collector's Edition of the anime adaptation of one of the most famous magical girl stories is finally with us. Cardcaptor Sakura is the best known and most loved of all of Clamp's works. Perhaps the biggest indicator of this, from a British perspective, is that the anime version is one of the few anime series to be shown on a mainstream TV channel. The anime aired on CITV back in the days when it was a segment of the main ITV channel. It has also been streaming in all four. Funimation, Crunchyroll are all not confirmed yet and may be a part of all the animes deal with a forthcoming streaming service, ITVX. However, when I say that it aired on CITV, that is not the entire truth. It is more accurate to say that the particular version of Cardcaptor Sakura was broadcast. It was called Cardcaptors. Its translation by the Canadian company Nelvana is one of the most notorious reworks of any anime known. Not only was the title changed, but so were the names of the characters and locations to make them for more English sounding. Elements of the story considered unsuitable to children, such as gay romance, were removed, despite children being the target audience for the series back in Japan. J.K. Kodek from the website Team Anime described Cardcaptor as the worst thing that has ever happened to anime that had a good Japanese name. It was one of the worst rebrandings ever. Fortunately for us, this is not the version we have been given. All the anime's versions comes with a later dub which covered the entire show, with the exception of one episode trailer and a post-credit scene following the final episode of the series, as well as remastered animation and 4K resolution. The story follows 4th grade elementary school student Sakura Kinomoto, who lives in the fictional city of Tomoeda with her archaeology professor father Fujitaka and her older brother Toya, and one she regularly gets into roles. Her mother, Nadeshiko, died when Sakura was only 3 at the age of 27. Sakura goes to school via rollerblading. It was the 90s, and is always happy to meet up with Toya's classmate, Yukito Yuki Sokishiro, and she loves him, although she is unaware that Yukito is actually in love with her brother. In her class, Sakura has several friends. There are 2 fellow members of her cheerleading club, Naoko Yangisawa, whose passion for ghost stories scares Sakura, and Chihiro Mihara, who is in a relationship with fellow student Takashi Yamasaki, a boy who is constantly telling tall tales which Sakura frequently falls for. There is also Rika Sasaki, who Sakura knows is in love with someone but she doesn't know who. Disturbingly, when the viewers find out, it is actually the class homeroom teacher, Mr. Terada. Although the original manga took this even further by saying the 2 were engaged. Thankfully, they got tuned down when the anime adapted the story. However, Sakura's best friend and also second cousin is Tomio Daidoji, whose mother Sonomi runs a toy company. He was also Nadeshiko's cousin. Indeed, Sonomi has never forgiven Fujitaka for taking Nadeshiko away from her. Tomoyo has many passions to leave. Her main one is dressing up Sakura in all kinds of outfits she makes herself and filming her in camera. As Sakura herself says, she's a good friend but just a little weird. While in her father's study, Sakura bumps into and opens a book which contains lots of cards. This card turns out to be magical, and by opening the book, Sakura has let them loose around the town. Opening the book also releases the guardian of the cards, a magical being called Kerberos, or Kerberos in the English dub, who despite being named after a 3-headed dog, actually takes the form of a cuddly toy, looking a bit like a winged lion cub. Kerberos, or as Sakura decides to call him, Kero, tells her that the cards were created by a long-dead Anglo-Chinese sorcerer named Clawreed. With the cards losing the world, they do as the police therefore need to be captured and returned to the book by opening the book in the first place. This demonstrates that Sakura has some form of magic powers within her, and thus Kero makes Sakura the Cardcaptor. He gives her the key to the book, which Sakura can transfer into a magical staff that she can use to get the cards back. Every time Sakura captures a card, she writes her names upon it to make the card hers, and then she can use its magical properties. The cloud cards themselves includes the Fly, the Jump, the Windy, and the Sword. Together, Sakura and Kero try to capture all the cards, although for much of the time, Kero has to pretend to be a cuddly toy to avoid arousing the suspicion of others, especially Toya. Until within viewers come to learn he has some magical powers of his own. The only other person who knows about the cards is Tomio, but effectively becoming a Lois Lane to Sakura's Superman. Albeit one of the aesthetics that she can film her love in even more outfits. Things become even more complicated, however, with new arrivals at the school. The first is an exchange student from Hong Kong named Xiaoran Lee Xiaoran in the dub, a descendant of Cloud Reed who first tries to capture the cloak cards himself. But as the series progresses, he and Sakura begins to work together and even fall in love. They are also later joined by Xiaoran's cousin Meling, sometimes spelled Melin, a character totally original to the anime who has no magical powers herself but is a skilled fighter, and claims she is engaged to Xiaoran. Other people who also have connections to Cloud Reed also appear, such as substitute teacher and local shrine maiden Kaho Mizuki, and English exchange student Ariel Hiragisawa. Regardless of all this, Sakura knows that she has to capture all the cards because if she doesn't, disaster will befall the entire world. There is a fair amount to discuss when it comes to Cardcaptor Sakura, some positive, some negative, and some relating ideas that had to make the story a bit weird. In terms of good points, the best is the artwork enhanced by this new 4K restoration. The character design especially is wonderful. When it comes to magical girl series like this, comparisons to Sailor Moon are inevitable, and rightly so when you consider the both manga ran in the same magazine. However, the Sailor Moon only has one classic outfit when she transforms. Sakura has an entire wardrobe thanks to Tomoyo. If there is ever a character that helps encapsulate the concept of kawaii, then Sakura has been one of the top candidates. Another interesting aspect to bring up is the dub, where the Cardcaptor's version is one of the most infamous. The one used in this collection developed by Animax is much more listenable, and I have no objection to Andrea Kwan's performance as Sakura, but the man voicing Yamasaki, I can find it neat, and the collection doesn't list any English credits. Sounds too old, given that all the kids in Sakura's class are preteens. There are some other issues with the dub that are worth mentioning. Scenes in which Tomio's scenes are not translated, and one scene in which the class are all playing the recorded from a music lesson is mistranslated. So they constantly talk about playing the flute, even though the subtitle version gives the right instrument. The subtitles used in this collection are an improvement of previous ones seen used for the show. For example, I seen US releases which had needlessly changed 170 degrees Celsius into 280 degrees Fahrenheit. However, there are still some peculiar movements, perhaps being best illustrated by the most famous meme the series ever produced. A very happy Sakura with the subtitle, "At this rate, everything will burn." Turns out that Sakura is actually saying this and voiceover as this moment is actually from a still from a trailer for the Christmas episode. In terms of negatives, well, there is not that much bonus material in this collection, and they get a nice case to store your collection in, as well as a booklet containing artwork for the series and an extensive article by Andrew Osman about the history of the show. Other than this, however, the only extras in this disc are Texas opening and closing. However, this does lead to another highlight of the show. The music with the best track as far as I'm concerned being the opening music for the series debuted Catch You Catch Me by Gomi. When it comes to music content, it would have been good if this collection also included the 2 feature films that were made of the series. Some aspects of Cardcaptor Sakura are a lot more mixed, and this mainly comes in the form of relationships between the characters. Some like between Sakura and Xiaoran are obviously great. Others, such as the gay love between Toya and Yukito, are clearly visible but only hinted at in the dialogue. Other relationships are much more problematic, especially Rika and Mr. Terada, which, as mentioned, got toned down when the series was adapted. It is virtually shunted out when the sequel, Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Cut, was made by having Rika go to a different school from the others. Also, there are 2 cases of intermediate relationships between cousins, with Sakura Tomio and Xiaoran and Meling. When Fujitaka and Nadeshiko first met, he was 25 and she was just 16. This wasn't the first time Clam have had this age gap relationship, as these were also the ages of gay lovers. Seishiro and Subaru when they first met at Toki Babylon. However, this is where I deviate from several other people. I think Sakura and Tomio's relationship is much more sinister than most viewers believe. In the 8th episode, the one which introduces Xiaoran, Sakura has to capture the Thunder card. In the original manga, this section is just a few pages long, but in the anime, it is an entire episode. In both cases, Sakura does this while wearing one of Tomio's outfits, a catgirl made costume in the anime. However, the Thunder cat is not so dangerous that when the outfit debuts, Tomio tells Sakura that she made it entirely out of rubber to protect her. When asked about why the outfit has cat ears, Tomio says she put them on because they look cute. Now, I think this is all wrong. I think that a 10-year-old girl dressing as a cat girl wearing rubber is not exactly a suitable thing. Parts of it are, but altogether it's wrong. Permit me to illustrate this with the following Venn diagram. Put it this way. If you were out on the street, you came across a 10-year-old girl dressed as a cat girl wearing rubber. I suspected that there might be a phone call to social services. I said earlier that Tomio is like Louis Lane, but I think she is more like the 30th Duke of Wyborn for the past show. Would we be happy to say things like, me, Tomio Daidoji, here, and Tomoeda's Penguin Park, dressing a 10-year-old girl in a rubber cat girl uniform costume, while armed with a camcorder at 3 o'clock in the morning, with a reputation, poor like things never ever heard of skirting. This girl must be stopped. What actually happened was, in the 2016, we got the sequel, Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card, which has its own weirdness. Namely, given that in the story the characters had only aged by about 2 years, how come they are all now using 24th century technology like smartphones and drones? While I admit that Cardcaptor Sakura is not my favorite of Clamp's work, see here for which ones are. It is nevertheless a fan favorite. It is still enjoyed to watch this show, which for many was an early exposure to anime, even if the original version was somewhat bastardized. Also, it is PG rated, so it is a nice way to introduce youngsters to anime too. As for Cardcaptor Sakura itself, well, Clear Card is approaching its conclusion, and next year we'll be see Holic Ray returning. Let's hope other stories also returning one day. I'm looking at you, X. 9 out of 10.